Hello, welcome to the June 4th, 2025 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply just send a question or type your question in the chat field. When asking questions in the chat field, if you could specify which level of Cubase you're running. So if you're running Cubase 11, 12, 13, also if we want to specify what level of Cubase, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and which operating system, that information is helpful. Often when asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be eclipsed because of the number of questions that are coming in. So if we don't see an immediate response to your questions, if we could avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that would be appreciated. You should have an index of all topics discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. And if you wanted to search for topics been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that wonderful site. As a reference, we covered over 39,000 topics. We also want to give a special thanks to two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just really want to make it a better community experience. Also, we'll give special kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today. If you have not, and I'm presenting from just outside of, in the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching us live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and begin. All right, so we have 25 Miles West asks, hi all, would love if Greg could kindly review the fixes in the 14.03 update out today. And most interested in those video related items. Can't update here till later in the week. So we'll give you a quick run through. It's mostly kind of maintenance features. There's going to be some new features, enhancements with the score editor as it's kind of being rolled out. So I just did a quick Google search right before the live stream on Cubase 14.03 release notes, and this is kind of what I was seeing. So you see some of the different enhancements within the score editor for note spelling, some new, also some new symbols like for different, so you see so we'll go through, so we have more improvements with Dorco project import improvements, some enhancements with DAW project, and I believe it also includes, we had a question on the live stream about MIDI CC64 not working, not being carried over in the DAW project, so I believe that was fixed. Some audio processing functionality, some media bay enhancements, some MIDI enhancements, overall stability, so video engine enhancements that we can see listed here. Some other general enhancements, not within kind of broader themes. So those are some of the new things found in 14.03. So it's a free release that you could download as of today. Okay, so we see a question from Watch Addicts 12. Says, greetings everyone. Mark down south in Little Rock, USA. Very audio question. Is it possible to set one's correction tolerances and select an entire track and have very audio clean it up in one pass? So what I would do if you wanted to perhaps kind of work that particular way, let me just pop over here. Let's say if we have a very audio file and we're going to edit my very audio. So if we come over here, so I could see all of the files. So what if I wanted to just control or command plus the letter A? At this time in very audio, we could just choose to correct pitch, and we could set kind of the percentage of how much the pitch is going to be corrected across all of the notes. So if we wanted to look at this in kind of full screen, so as we wanted to see all of the notes, so all selected notes, and if all notes are selected, we could just come over here, we could do the correct pitch, or if we wanted to look at on a particular section here, we could just move one, like the bottom center area, and we could do pitch correction across multiply selected events, like so. So let me know if that is helpful for you. So Watch Addicts 12's next question. Here's a should not be possible issue. Mac, maybe Monterey, and running UR 824. Cubase 8.5 gives left and right volume. Cubase meter is stereo. Cubase 13 only right side of stereo sounding. Naturally, Cubase 13 meter is active and only on right side. All input and output settings are the same with 8.5 and 13. Called support, they suggest the latest driver update for the UR24. Do you concur? So it doesn't sound like a driver issue to me. If it's still functioning, maybe it's something in the control room. So let's say if we wanted to look at this. So we look at our meters here. So we go to our mix console. We can see that we're going to have stereo meters here. And we see our stereo meter here. Now there is a channel setting in the control room if you're using the control room. So so this way we're still seeing stereo meters on the left and right, but on the monitoring path, we only see the right hand channel because we have this set here. So if I only want to hear the left channel, I could solo the left channel. So we see stereo metering here, but in the control room, we see it as only in the left channel because that side is being monitored. What I would do to test is just do a brand new project, because it could also be maybe a routing issue, like going into a mono group or a group track that is only defined for the left output. But an easy way to test, what I would do as a control test, is come over here and I'm just turn my control room down. I'm going to add a stereo track. So we'll say, okay, let's add a stereo track. And under the tools, we'll go to inserts to tools, and this is a great time to use like the test tone generator. So we can see right now that we have a test tone of a sine wave at 1K at minus 18 dB. So see if when you're looking at this, if you see the stereo meter on the channel, if you see the stereo meter coming through here on the right hand side, so we see it on the master output, and then you could see if it's going into your control room and see if you see the meters in the control room show up right there in stereo. Now if this track was going to a group, and let's say that group was set to a mono configuration, at that point you may also run into we're only seeing like one particular side. So, or if we have that going to So let's say we have this and our group. So let's say we add it to a stereo group. So we can see now that our audio here is going to be routed out to group 1. So let's say, and this group output was set only on the left-hand side. So if you see something like that, it could be that maybe the group is showing it. There's a group that is maybe only is not going to the stereo out, but directly to maybe the right-hand side or left-hand side as opposed to a stereo bus. So I would check those things out and see if you kind of come across anything, but it seems less, I would say it's less of a driver issue and more of a routing issue. And check, if you go into the control panel for the UR824, you'll see a little applet that controls. So let's say if we come over here, let's go to, if it's still playing back fine in 8.5 or is it 9.5, the earlier version, you could always go to the DSP mix effects. And what this would allow you to do is come over, and once we have the DSP mix effects open, you could go to initial data and see if that makes a difference as well. But my thoughts would be it's going to be probably a routing issue, something that's on version 13 that you're not seeing on the earlier version. So give some of those suggestions a try and see if it makes sense for you. All right, so we see Tim K says, hey everybody, glad to be joining once again. His cat buddy is waving a paw hello to my cat Steven and other pets. His oldest has a performance. So he might catch the last bit live and he'll catch the replay though. Hope that your oldest has a great performance. All right, and we see from Mikkel Nyquist, it says CMC controllers. So let me know if you have a specific question about the CMC controllers. I don't think that they're going to be working on the latest Mac OS versions, but I think you could still run them in the Windows version of Cubase. But if you have specific questions, let me know. All right. I also just thank everyone for I'm sorry for our normal Tuesday live stream being on Wednesday today. So just wanted to be able to be a chaperone for my son's school field trip yesterday. He asked me to help out. Just appreciate everyone's understanding. So I know we may have less questions today as a result, kind of being off our normal day. All right, so we see the artist known as Love says hello. I hope everyone's doing great. Thank you for all that you do, Greg. Hope yesterday went well. So you had a good time. Went to James Madison's house. If you're not familiar with him from U.S. history, he's kind of the father of the American Constitution. So it's nice to see where he lived. And I went to James Madison University, so it's nice to visit the home of the namesake of my college. All right, so we see Martin joining from Germany. We see Arif B checking in from the Netherlands, saying hello to everyone. All right, we see Vince from Canada joining us. It's Flyv. We see Jan from Cubase Index giving kudos to Jazz Dude for the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. Uno Memento wants people to not forget to hit the like button. All right, so you see John Barry says, evening, Greg, lost my connection mid-Zoom. Hope it went well. So it's always a lot of fun. All right, it's good to see you for a bit on. Figured it might be just getting late there. And we see Randy from Radar, the band, saying howdy from Dallas-Fort Worth. And we have Quadeus Madness joining from Albuquerque and Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. We see Roland Sepp joining from Sussex in southern England. Tony Trunzo joining from Australia. All right, Big Rat Studios says, good PM, please. Do you know why my recorded vocals becomes faster after closing and reopening it? I always have both tempo track and project tempo set to the same tempo. So I probably going to be a sample rate issue. So let's say if I come over here, we'll just open a project here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of look at the file, and we can see that we're at 48 kilohertz for this vocal file here. So we'll play this.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
Now I'm going to do a new project. So this project is at 48 kilohertz, and if we look at the tempo, so I'm going to do a new project. We'll create empty, and I'm going to set this project to be at 44.1 kilohertz for the sample rate. Hit OK. Now we'll drag this 48K file into the 44.1. So just kind of give an idea when we listen to it. So we had that as our reference. I'm going to drag this over to the 44.1 project, and as we do this, so we can see that this is going to be slower.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your
So if we listen to the project at the correct sample rate, as we do this,
our yellow coach to ferry us home.
It's going to be like pitch will be slightly up, not quite a half step. So make sure that perhaps like the sample rate of your audio interface didn't change, and that could do exactly what you describe. Okay, so you see Tim Weinheimer says thanks Greg, I want to know what the update was all about. All right, so we see Quadeus Madness says, how did you get guitar tabs in the score editor? Okay, so let's come over. Let me open up something with some MIDI guitar in it. Okay, so it's slightly different in 13 and 14, so let me know. But if I want it to come over here, we'll show you in 14. So if I go to my score editor, just find... Just look for something here. All right, so let's say I look at this and I want to turn this into guitar tablature. I would go to the settings page, to instrument, and we would say instrument type. We would say probably fretted instrument. All right, we'll say electric guitar here. We'll do standard tuning. All right, so, and then when we see presentation, at this point, what we say is notation and tablature, or we could choose to do tablature only. And if we wanted to show the rhythms in the tablature, we could go ahead and do that. So go to the settings. Click on instrument. You want to say the instrument type, if you want to be like acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and then you'll see for strings and tuning. So you could just come over here under the presentation. You can see notation, notation and tablature with rhythms, or just to be tablature only. And then you could see the tab there. Wonderful to see Pablo Vasquez, wonderful drummer from Hot Mess. All right, so we see Parabot2 says, "Hi Greg, what's the best way to pitch down bass or guitar as you are tracking it?" So let's take a look. So let's say I want to take this guitar part here. How do I All right, so what you could do is like go to the mix console. Ideally, you'd probably want it to be tuned, but probably what you can do is come over and let's say I don't have a guitar handy, but I'm just gonna send this track to a group. So we'll say let me just. It's just going out to MIDI track. Let me add a instrument track so we can show it just quickly. Okay, so I'll just take this. All right, so let's say I want to now, I'll take this part here. So let's say we're going to just solo this particular. And we wanted to record, let's say that's our incoming guitar sound. Let's come over, I'm going to route this effect to a group track. All right, and our group track, so we now have the guitar playing through here, and I'm going to add an audio track. And we'll set our group as our input. So probably on the input channel, I would maybe, let's see if we could just put like a pitch shift. So on this case, it'll be this example like the group channel. So I want to come over here, let's do pitch shift. All right, let me just set it to. So you could put an octaver on. Let me just see if there's another plugin. So, but yeah, any kind of pitch shifting plugin you could put on the input channel as you're recording. So, so let's come over here. Let's see if there's another plugin that we could just access. Maybe we could do it under the FX modulator. And let's come over to pitch shifter. So now we're going to take the FX modulator, go to the pitch shift and drop it an octave. And now we could record that. We could place that on the input channel. So if we wanted to come here and then record the output of that. So let's say if I wanted to be an octave higher. So now if we place like the FX modulator, select the pitch shift tab, drop it an octave and put that on the inputs, on the input channels, as you record, you could record an octave down. So give that a try using FX modulator. And you could modulate those differences. But when we just kind of routed this guitar through the group and we play it back, we've now recorded it an octave lower. And then I will have moved it up. So if you just place that on the input channel, you could record your guitar and then record it an octave lower in real time if you need to. All right, we have Parabot 2 joining us from Australia as well. Wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. And we see Stefan from Sweden. Watch Addicts 12 says the very audio answer is perfect. All right, glad to hear. All right, Georgios asks, hi Greg, how can we create quad tracks? Just curious to check it out and see why almost every film/media composer uses this type of setup. Okay, so let's say if we're going to do a new project here, and we'll just load up a quick. I'm going to create, first of all, I'm going to create an audio in my studio menu. Go to audio connections and let's create an output, and we want this output to be and then we could just kind of choose, you know, whether we want it to be LRCS, or so there's some different choices that we'll have here. So different ambisonics. Usually there's kind of a quad. Let me just. So we'll say under more 2D, we'll say quadraphonic. Okay, so and this would be left, right, left surround, right surround. You connect this to your particular audio interface outputs. So we could say, okay, I want to use my mix left, right, and then in the control room, we could always add a monitor and make sure that this monitor is set for quad. And the reason why so many film composers use quadraphonic is they can't necessarily go into the center channel because that's where dialogue lives. So when we go to add an instrument track, we can now come over, let's say, okay, I want a Hallian Sonic, and I want to say, okay, let's come over to our Iconica sketch, And we'll just do, let's say, quick strings. All right, and when we go to add, make sure I did it right. So when we go to add an instrument track, we could send this immediately to our quadraphonic output. Okay, so now when I come over, we'll just say, okay, and as we would play back this particular sound, we would make sure that when we come over to our headphone mix, we would say, okay, we want to go out of output D. So, this is going out of our quadraphonic output. So when we would play a particular sound, we could see that as we do this, let me just resize that. Now we could move this quadraphonic sound in. We're not listening to it in quad because we're just on stereo on YouTube. But now you see that when I play note, it's going to automatically be spread and sent to our 4 speakers. So as we look at it here, I play one single note. It's being sent out to 4 speakers, and then we could go out to our quadraphonic output. And at that point, if we have the control room set up for quadraphonic, we could just simply have the 4 channels that way. And again, why film composers use quadraphonic is because they're often kind of restrained from using the particular center channel for dialogue purposes. All right, so we see Rick France joining in, saying hi from the Pacific Northwest. Radar the band. Randy is happy to see Pablo on. And Michael Teams has granted Pablo 1 gallon of nougat ice cream. All right, Black Eyes asks, hi Greg, Cubase 14 Pro, is there a way to create a logical editor preset or shortcut to randomize, colorize audio and MIDI events? All right, so let's come over. Let's say I'll just record some data here quickly. All right, so I'll just kind of punch in, punch out, punch in. Okay, so let's see if we could randomly assign colors to the events. I think we might be able to do it in a logical project logical editor. If we could do it, it's going to be in there. So usually we could have kind of very specific, like colorized by name, etc. But let's say I want to say media type is equal to, or we'll say container type is going to be equal to event. And we want to transform. So let's say we want our events here. So let's say set colors. I'm not sure if there's a random. We could increment the colors for all choices. So we could choose to increment. We could decrement the colors. And these are going to be based upon our project colors here. Not our project setup. Sorry, let's go to the project color setup. So I can see these. So when I decrement colors, it would just kind of decrement by the colors here. But I don't think that there's a random function. We could set it to particular colors. So we could say, okay, I want to take all events and apply to, this color, but I don't think there's a random in the colors that, but we could set it to fixed values. We could set it to particular colors. We could colorize, set to fixed colors based on the name. So if you want kick, snare, hi-hat, toms, overheads to always be colored this and bass to always be colored that, we could do those things, but I don't think that we could. Let's see if we could randomly select events. Yes, I don't think that there's a random selection for colors that I know. I'll play around with it. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, JP Anthony's production says, hello Cubase, please kindly tell Cubase engineer community to make extraction of wave stems possible for Cubase users. Thanks. So it's already possible. So you could do it with spectral layers. So you get a spectral layers Go version with Cubase that will allow you to do all of the, so if it's like extraction of wave stems, but and if you have the full version of spectral layers, I'll show you just so, and I think spectral layers has probably the best unmixing capabilities on the market. Let me just see if I have. All right, so let's take this particular project here. All right, make sure I can kill everyone. So once we have in spectral layers, and I've unmixed this already, but if I just come here to unmix song, I can now just come over and say, okay, I just want to hear drums.
Tell us, maybe I'd say things a different way. There's a parade that's inside of your soul.
And then if I wanted to take out like one of like the vocal file, I could just drag and drop that to the project window and
only if time would tell us. Maybe I'd say things a different way.
So with the spectral layers Go, you could extract the vocals, and if you wanted to do more instruments, you could upgrade to Spectral Layers Pro, but Cubase was the first program to actually incorporate it, if that's what you mean by extraction of wave stems. Okay. See, Uno Momento, just giving Michael Teams some beer in lieu of ice cream. All right, so we see from Watch Addicts 12 says we'll check control room. It had a stereo piano plugin, got half stereo, just FYI. So it could be control room, but you could see if you're seeing the full stereo on the metering in the mixer versus the control room. All right, so we see Balsa joining us, sending greetings from Montenegro. Thanks for joining us. You see Terry Gray also just replying to JP Anthony's production, says it's a core feature of spectral layers. And we see from Watch Addict 12 says this UR 824 was set up 5+ years ago. Driver's never been updated since, if that's relevant. So as long as it's passing audio, I think you're fine. But you don't. But check the routing. And we see Terry Gray's checking in from Minneapolis. Great to see you on the Zoom meetup on Friday. It was great to catch up with you. All right, so we see Roland Stuff says, hi Greg, I keep receiving promos for vocal production software using AI-generated voices. My inclination is to go with Steinberg plugins if possible. Is anything like this available or planned? So I haven't, Yamaha has done some of the early work in this field with Vocaloid. So, but I haven't seen anything, nothing has been announced currently for like an AI generated vocal. So, but I think there's some exciting stuff out there. But you could have the same singer as 14 million other people. All right, Tony Trunzo asks from Australia, Greg, when I use my Arturia 49 Keylab controller on Cubase 14 and I move a fader or transport buttons, I get a terrible high-pitched noise as I move the knobs and it doesn't do it innuendo. What could it be? So check to make sure, like if you go to your studio setup and we go to your MIDI port setup, see if like in all MIDI inputs, so if you're using your Arturia controller for control and for a controller, so generally there's going to be like when I go to my panorama that there's my Nectar, I could see that there's different MIDI ports for the control versus like the keys. And see if you go in here and if you uncheck in all MIDI inputs for some of the, like maybe the control MIDI port to see if that makes a difference. So again, go to your studio menu, to studio setup, to MIDI port setup, and try unchecking some of the in all MIDI input ports and see if that makes a difference. It could be just transmitting MIDI information, like high notes when you move parameters on the controller. All right, wonderful to see Razels the Mini checking in from Denmark. Michael Teams has granted myself and my family 1 gallon of Kahlua Mocha ice cream. Thank you for that. I think that's my favorite flavor. All right, DJ Mixes says, hi Greg, Cubase 14 Pro user. How can I lower several tracks by 2 dB, for example? Somehow it doesn't work when I select the tracks and I want to turn down the volume. Currently, I do it via a group track. All right, so there's a couple different approaches for this, and it could be depending if you have automation or not. So let me just revert this quickly here. All right, so let's say I want, so there's a couple different ways to approach this. If we want to adjust kind of the overall like volume and we could just adjust our clip gain volume here. We could make an adjustment via a keyboard shortcut. So if I wanted to pop over, let's say, to my MIDI remote, just plug my MIDI remote back in here real quick. All right, just see if my Korg is going to connect or not. All right, so I'll just go ahead and I'll just show it here real quick. So if I want to come over, so we could go to a key command and we could choose to increment or decrement volume. So if we wanted to do kind of clip gain based, when we go to our key commands, you will see increment, event volume. So let's say I want this to be, I'll set just a quick key command here. So we're going to increment and let's choose to decrement. I'm going to use kind of the same keyboard shortcut, but the down arrow. So you'll see that under audio. So and now if I wanted to decrement, I could go, and that would do it by 1 dB at a time, or increment, also just adding 1 dB of clip gain. Now if there is automation and we wanted to affect the automation, so I will come over here. Let me see if I have the, okay, so let's go to our automation. So let's say my automation value is at roughly minus 11.1. So we could use the project logical editor and we could say, okay, I want, and we could do this on selected track. So we'll say I want to, property is set, and I think that there's even presets for this. So let's come over here to automation. Here, we'll just build it from scratch here so you can see kind of the logic behind it. Okay, so we want to choose to transform, and we say media type is equal to automation, and I think we need to say property is set to, like, if parent object is selected. So now we want to trim, and we'll say decrement volume in dB by 1. So now as we come over here, we can see that this automation point will automatically move up. So I have my automation value here. Let's say that's set to minus, I'll just put it to -3. So now as I hit apply, that automation node can I have this track selected. So this way, when I do the property is set to parent object is selected, this automation lane doesn't have to be open, and I could just increment or decrement the automation value using the project logical editor, or we could choose to just do the clip gain using the increment audio volume, decrement audio volume key commands. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, and you see DJ Mixes, Stefan from Switzerland, and Flyvies from Winnipeg. Sorry, I forgot where in Canada you're from. I blanked on it. All right, Mario's Musicus asks, "Hi Greg, can Cubase do crossfades between events on different tracks where dialogue editing like Pro Tools could do?" Let's take a look. All right, so we have 2 tracks on. I'll go ahead and move these up top here so we can see it a little easier. All right, so let's hit the X key. All right, so let's see if we. All right, now let's see if I just hit the X key, it doesn't work, but let's say if I grab these 2 here. And we hit the X key, so let's say. One of the things we could do, now let's see if I get these to overlap so they're not just concurrent with each other. So let's say if we do this, and we hit the X key, but let's say if I hit the A key, and let's say I select the range, and then hit the A key, that we could just simply do that between different tracks. So if you set kind of the range of the overlapping tracks here, so let's say, okay, I just want to come here between the 2 tracks and hit the letter A, and that's adjust fades to range. This will fade out as this fades in. So you can do it between 2 separate tracks if you need to. So most people tend to use one single track for doing fades. So, but if you wanted to accomplish the same thing, just select kind of the range that you want on both events and hit the letter A instead of X, and that will do a fade out here and a fade in starting on the other track. All right, we have Giorgito, saying hello to everyone from Greece. All right, we see Sable Winters joining from Bay Area. We see Daniela's Da Vinci Girl joining from Bochum, Germany. We see Gerald Ely also from the Bay Area. All right, we see from Quadeus Madness, in 14, can you do the same tabs for audio guitar track? So if it's a single note guitar part, you could convert that to MIDI utilizing Very Audio and then do the guitar tab with that. So let's see if we could find an example. I think I may have something, but it's not intended to do chords from the audio to MIDI conversion. So, but let's say if I want to come over here, and here I think we have some like single note guitar parts here at the beginning. So if it's like a monophonic part like that, I could come over and let's go into Very Audio, and where we see this, I could now take the Very Audio and we will extract MIDI. And as I look at this part now, we could go to our score editor. We could set our settings here. So I think I'm in A major, so let me set the key. right, and at this point, when we go to our instrument settings, and again, this isn't intended to work with chords, so we'll say, okay, I want this to be fretted instrument. And we'll say, let's do tablature for it and show the rhythms in tab. So you could kind of do it like that, but it's not intended to do the MIDI transcription of like full polyphonic audio material. All right, Big Rat Studios asks, how do I create a template file in Cubase 14? So if I wanted to come over, let's say we want to build a template, we could just kind of start from empty, and we can say, okay, let me just add, we'll say 16 tracks of audio. I'm going to come over here, let's say kick in, kick out, snare, top, hit the tab key that allows you to name the next track, bottom, hat, tom, high, tom, low, floor, tom, let's say overhead, left, overhead, right, and let's say, okay, we want to do this as room, mic, left, room, mic, right. Let's make a bass. Let's do guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and say piano. Okay, so let's say we have a number of tracks here. So what I want to do also is to add, let's say, a drum group. So I'm going to come over here. Let's select all my drums. I want to add a group track. So I'm going to add track. Let's add a group track to the selected tracks. We'll make it stereo. We'll call this our drum group. I want to add like a reverb and a delay to start off with. So let's come over and add an effects channel track. Or 2. So let me move this down to the bottom here. And let's add a delay. So let's add an effects track. And now we'll do like, let's say, studio delay. So once I kind of have my different tracks kind of set up as I want with my naming conventions, I can now come right over here and go to my file menu and save as template. We'll call this June 4th, 2025. And now when I go to start a new project, we'll come here to new project. We'll see under more, and then we can see our template, and we can now choose what folder our audio files are recorded into. We'll say okay and activate, and that's how you could start off and build your template. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Big Rat Studios. All right, so we see Pablo is going to pop out for about an hour or so. All right, so we see Pablo. It says, sorry, Greg, for new drums in a hot mess. No problem. I haven't heard him. I haven't got the files from Gareth yet, but I have some bass lines done, so hopefully they'll match up. All right, so you see Daniela just says, running Cubase 12 Pro is a second DAW, no plans to upgrade because of compatibility issues with my hardware. Fairlight EVO 5 bar DAW running Windows 7, no VST3 is possible. Yeah, I guess it seems like maybe the Fairlight, that version won't be updated to do VST3 support. So. All right, so we see Massimo Campobello, hi Greg from Italy. Bro, how do you do time multiple stems in a project? Okay, it says, so if you want to do multiple stems, so let's say if we have a project, let me just do... All right, so let's see if we come over here, I will... All right, so let's say I have just like a quick project. I want to make stems of like, you know, bass drums and guitar or something like that. All right, so let's say. All right, and let's say if I go to my Groove Agent track here, and let's say I want to take my kick and route it out to output to, I want my snare to go out of its own output. All right, and we have rim shot. We want that to go out of the same output as a snare. And let's say our hi-hat go to output 4. And let's say my ride, I want to go to output 6. So these are all now being sent to different outputs. So if we have, you know, let's say if I just kind of cut some parts out here. So let's say between these two, so I want to cut out this middle part here. All right, so let's say, and maybe the bass is going to come in on the second measure of this. So let's say. So if I want to export stems from this, what we could do is just go to your file menu, to audio mix down. I'm going to just come over and set the left and right locators. We choose multiple. Then I can say, okay, I want my Groove Agent plus the VST instrument channels plus all of my audio channels. And we could choose, okay, I want it to be 24-bit, 48K, whatever. I'm going to create a new project. So let's say, so at this point, we'll say export audio. It's going to take each of the individual areas here and automatically, and I chose to do a mono down mix, but that should be okay. So now when you come over here, so my snare is so at this point we could just kind of choose your different elements. So again, once you have everything done here, we can just come over to this to say export audio mix down. Choose multiple, and just for demonstration purposes, we'll create a new project. We'll create, and we do this. I don't have to choose mono down mix. We could say, okay, I want it to be interleaved, and we can say, let's export. It's going to create a new project for us with all of the files. So as we and then all the individual stems, we've created stems of all of our different files just that easily. So let me know if that's what you wanted to see. All right, so we see rolling stuff. It says, Greg, I've imported a guitar track I played on my SX900 keyboard. It plays fine, but there's fret noise at the moment on the final MIDI note stops, which I'd like to lose. There's no sign of what's causing this at the point this noise happens in any of the lower window controller section functions. Any thoughts on what could be causing this fret noise? So it could be, if you're playing it from your Roland keyboard, I'm assuming it's probably something that's kind of maybe baked into the sound itself. So if we go to, let's see if we could recreate something similar. So some of the same sounds might be utilized in Hallian Sonic. So let's say so, some of these, it would be interesting to see, like, if you, when you're utilizing, like, sometimes the actual sound itself may have been sampled with fret buzz when you change the length, when you hold the note out for a particular length. Let's see. You might, if, with, it may be programmable out from within the parameters of the particular sound. But if it was something that's kind of baked into the sound, like here we can see, okay, we're going to have like a delay that's kind of built in to the sound, but it sounds like it's probably something that's inherent within the guitar sound in the SX900. So it's probably going to be programming source. Sometimes it may be kind of burned into the sample that it's based on. So there's not much that we could do in Cubase to do that if that's the case, because the sound is actually being generated directly from the SX900 sound. But it could be maybe adjusting the length, or, see if at a certain point, if you hold it out, if you get fret noise. But it sounds like it's probably going to be baked into the particular sound. All right, so we see Val Y42 is happy that we have the live stream today. I think I saw yesterday that you missed it. So Terry Gray just says, hey Greg, is there a way us Nuendo 14 users can download the awesome templates that come with Cubase 14? I'm not sure if they're, sometimes Nuendo users, I think the thought behind it is that maybe they don't want kind of pre-done templates. But if you want to email me, Terry at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to copy the Cubase 14 templates and send them to you. and tell you what folder to put them in. Probably also, if you download a trial version of Cubase 14, just install it. You could have access to the same templates, and those templates will work in Cubase or Nuendo 14. So, all right, so we see from Big Rat Studios, it says thank you very much. So you're welcome. All right, so we see from Val, says, when drawing over the event in the MIDI part, there was a question popping up to extend the part or draw over anyways. I clicked on Don't Show Again, but selected the wrong option. How can I reselect that? All right, so let's see if we can. All right, so say I have a note here. All right, so let's see if there's, so here we could choose to enlarge the part. So let me know if, and it could also be, so let me just, when drawing over the event in the MIDI part, there's a question popping up to extend a part or draw anyways. So let's see if I draw a part over top here. Let me know if this is like the message that you get, or if when moving a note out of bounds here. So let's say I move this note about events, about it's exceeding the part boundary. So we can choose to enlarge the part. Let me see if there's a preference. Probably under, I assume, editing MIDI. So maybe this preference, and it could also be tied, you know, if the notes are disappearing underneath, try just to go to editing. And there's delete overlaps, and that could also be like when you're drawing over, that the delete overlaps is turned on, but it's not necessarily like a message that pops up. But let me know if you try to come over here to the MIDI, if it's to use extended note context. So maybe it's that. But let me know if I'm completely misunderstanding. All right, so we see from Balsa, question, can you show how to extract just the vocal or just the instrumental from a song with Spectral Ergo and be able to change the tempo to match with the project tempo? Okay. Okay, so let's jump back to... All right, so let me just activate this again here. Okay, so let's say at this point, you know, we want to unmix our particular environment. So let's say, just make sure I'm not. All right, so I have this one done. So I'm going to drag the vocals out. Okay. So now when we listen to it here. So what I could do now is just I could select both of these files, and so right now they're kind of in an in-between state where it's kind of playing. This is kind of a representation of what the vocals is doing. But if we now come over to audio and choose to bounce selection, we could replace the particular events. And if we do like a tempo detection of this, so let's say we analyze here. Okay. So now that I've done that, I'm going to select both of the files. And at this point, if we go to audio, to advanced, we'll say set definition from tempo. I'm going to just set my time signature to 4/4. And now, even though it's been kind of extracted, I can now take this part of the file and we could speed it up. So at that point so the trick is, I think you want to just simply select the particular file and then do a bounce selection, and then it will work with then it's going to work as kind of like a normal file. So bounce selection on the file itself, and then we could just simply do all of our normal tempo manipulation. All right, Captain Zero asks, when I install a reverb effect, it shows it in the folder Other. How to move it into the reverb folder? All right, so it's probably because the company didn't do the metadata for the particular plugin. So if you go to your VST plugin manager, what you may have to do is to click on the plus symbol here. So again, Studio menu to VST plugin manager, click on the plus. And we can say we want to copy the current collection. So we'll give it a name here. So we'll say June 4th. Because when it's in its default, we can't really change the folders. But once we are over here, we can say, okay, I want to do this EQM5. I wanted to put it into the Dynamics folder. Now that we've created a new folder, which is a duplicate, we could change the order of the plugins as we see fit. So now I could just come over to the reverb folder and move the particular plugin to whatever folder I want. But you can't move it into the default folder. So click on the plus symbol, copy the current collection, save it as a different name, and then you could modify and move the plugins and organize them kind of as you see fit. So, and then if you wanted to switch back to your default. So the default can't be modified, but you could make a copy of the default and modify that. So often, like I have my plugins organized, and when I get a new plugin, I make sure it will show up in the list, but then I need to manually copy it over into the particular folder I want to, since it's not a default. But generally that happens when the plugin company doesn't specify within the VST3 specification that it is what category it should go into. All right, so you see from Val says in the control room we have meters for LUFS and general meter. Can we also show imaging? So if we want to, we could see. So depending on what you mean by imaging, but a lot of times what I do is just run the supervision in the control room. So as we would come over here and, just from the particular plug-in here, we could see all of our supervision meters. So, the meters here are really kind of intended more for like the audio level and loudness. But again, if you just click on, if you go to the control room here under the main area, if you click on the inserts tab, that when you get to the main section, you could have plugins there, and those plugins can show all sorts of different metering options. So I would probably just run it as supervision within the control room, and then you see exactly what the control room is producing. All right, Balsa asks, question, is there a preference for events to change the color and get the color of the track they are on when dragging event from one track to another? Okay, so let's say if we have a track, I'm going to add in audio track. We can come over here. I'm going to change this to maybe like a bluish color. Okay, so now when I drop, because we haven't specified the event color, and now when I come over here and I drop an audio event over, it's going to show up as that particular color there. Okay, so this automatically assumes the track color. Now if we move it to this, because we haven't colorized the event, it would automatically come, and I'll just move this over here. All right, so the event itself hasn't been colorized. The color is assuming the part color. So if I come over here and move it to the track, it will assume the track color because it's now just following the event color. So, but if I come here and let's say I make a copy and I specifically color this event, let's say green, now that this event has specifically been colored, I move it, it's going to maintain its same color because this color was for the event was chosen. So if the event is just assuming the color of the track, then, and it hasn't specifically been chosen for the track, that color will adopt to the track color. But if the event has been colorized already, it will then immediately just assume it will maintain the color when it's been specifically colored. But when it's just assuming the track color, it will move the track color based upon, it will change based upon the track. So let me know if that makes sense. Yeah, see, Da Vinci Girl says, Greg, thanks a lot for your sudden email, but the previous owner of the Fairlight EVO is for this month in Germany, and there's a lot to do and arrange, so we could not join last Friday, but you'll get a proper answer. Yeah, so what the video showed, I know we had discussion on this, I think, last Tuesday's live stream. So it's, just a video of, I think it was Logic that was synchronized via MIDI timecode, and Cubase would work the same way. So I don't think it was anything that was automatically set up. Just in the video, they didn't show it being set up. So, but Cubase would synchronize the same way. All right. All right, my chat field jumped, so. All right, so we have Raw Justice Hip Hop. He says he's listening in on a Roku and decided to check in from the computer from Capitol Heights, Maryland. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Watch Addicts 12 says, I can't begin to fathom the number of gigabytes stored in your Cubase brain. You're an invaluable resource. Thanks. I've just made mistakes earlier than most people, and hopefully remember my mistakes. So. All right, Air Gots Free says, hi there, I have a simple question. Can I use Cubase 13 as a slave to Reason 11? So I'm not sure if Reason 11 synchronizes. I know for years, I don't have a current license of Reason 11. My friend that founded the company, I don't think is no longer involved in the company. But I'm not sure if Reason 11 can sync. If it has sync abilities, Cubase can slave to any program that, sends MIDI timecode or SMPTE timecode to it. But I'm not sure if Reason works and is able to synchronize. But I think obviously the latest version of Reason runs as a VST instrument inside of Cubase, so you may not need to sync. But if Reason can send out MIDI timecode or SMPTE timecode, then Cubase can sync to it. So Cubase can sync. I'm not sure if Reason, I know for a long time Reason didn't, but I don't have a current license to know if it still does slave to Reason. If Reason can send MIDI timecode and act as a master for Cubase to sync to. So, but Cubase can sync. I'm not sure if Reason can actually be the kind of the controlling device in synchronization. All right. See, maybe this might be part of just see a comment from Watch Addicts 12 because I saw Nectar on your screen. My panorama P6 pitch shifts all during a performance, like there's a ghost operating the wheel down a whole step, and then when in the mood up a whole step. Nectar thinks I need to replace the whole wheel system. The parts of cheap, great controller. Otherwise, thought I'd just buy a new one. Don't know. So a lot of times, I've had my Nectar. I think I got it when, right after my son was born. So I've probably had it 12 years now. I don't abuse it, and I may not use it every single day, but I have used it for 12 years in my office. But it is kind of a common thing. I have an old Kawai K12 whose pitch bend wheel just kind of randomly will spit out MIDI pitch bend controller information, which is why it's not sitting on my desk anymore. And you could always check just if you go to, on a MIDI track, go to your MIDI inserts, and often if you just kind of leave it on for a bit, so you'll see, come over here to MIDI monitor. And when we go to the MIDI monitor, even if you leave it on for a couple hours, just come over here and see if it's spitting out, MIDI pitch bend data. So if it was, you may see something like this just kind of randomly appear. So it is a common thing for many MIDI controllers. Some companies are more guilty of this than others. It could be perhaps a business model, because if your controller works for 12 years, you tend not to buy another one. But a lot of controllers do have a problem where the modulation and pitch bend wheel are kind of on the same hardware unit. So if you do a lot of modulation, it could throw off and make pitch bend just kind of randomly kind of spit out. So if you have the option to just replace that board. It's probably cheaper than doing a whole new controller if it makes sense financially to do that and you're comfortable doing the replacement. But it is a pretty common thing that happens with MIDI controllers. Okay, so we see from Rob Schmedicke, says, hello from Florida. I have the latest version of the download assistant. However, after it loads, it is grayed out and just gives me an error ding. I've tried turning off firewall security. Is there another way of checking what's wrong? So check to make sure that when you open up the download assistant here, that you're actually kind of logged in as well. So it's easy if you come over here to My Account, just, make sure that when you go to your My Account here, that you're logged in. So it's sometimes you could get logged out of this and then it may not show you all of your different options, but make sure that you're logged in with your account there. All right, so you see from Roland stuff, it says, regarding my earlier question with the AI lyric singing voice plugins, Greg, I'm no great AI fan, but I'm just a little tired of having to be my own backing vocalist. Another voice in the back line could help. Yeah, I understand, and I'm not a singer or a keyboard player, so if I had a choice to, just kind of program vocals that sounded great, I would probably take advantage of it too if I needed it for the project. So I think there's lots of great opportunities in that are available that third-party tools can provide, and I think it's great that Steinberg allows that to work within its own ecosystem in the form of different plugins. So, but I completely understand as someone who's always a frustrated piano player, and I know I should just practice, but, or, not a great singer that, so I understand where you're coming from. All right, so we see from Quadeus Madness, says, excellent, I played some lead single notes, but I can't remember exactly what I did, so this helps a lot. So. All right, Joshua Godswill asks, how to fast forward in a project whilst listening. Okay, so... All right, let me just revert this. All right, so say I'm playing along here in my project. And I wanted to fast forward while listening, so I'm just going to use the plus key. And let me just... And I think there might be a preference. Let me just check the preference under transport. Okay, so there's a stop playback while winding. So I'm going to turn this preference off. So go to your settings or preferences, go to transport, and you'll see stop playback while winding. And then I'm just going to use the plus and minus keys on my numeric keypad. So say as I play, now I can let go, I can rewind. And it's continuing to play until I stop. So minus key goes backwards or forward. So just the plus and minus keys on the numeric keypad, if you have a numeric keypad, which I always recommend. And make sure that you have this preference set under preferences, transport, uncheck stop playback while winding. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Joshua. All right, Carlton Joseph says, "Hi Greg, is this the new update that dropped today?" So yeah, I'm showing Cubase 14.03. The latest version just was released today. All right, so we see from SE Track says, "Hello Greg, show me how to color the whole track. If I could, a track it only color the corner. If I color a track, it only color a corner in the track." All right, so maybe it's if you wanted to colorize kind of the whole track. So let's open up with some more tracks. So if it's in the track area here, what you could do is if you go to your preferences or settings, and you'll see track and mix console channel colors, and then you'll see tracks. So if I click apply, here we could only see kind of those particular colors there, but if I choose to colorize the tracks, we can see this whole area gets filled in with the track colors. So again, if that's what you're talking about, the colors in this area, and I'm just going to reread it just to make sure. Okay, or how to color the whole track if I could color a track. All right, so again, if I select my track, I could come over here, hold down the Alt or Option key and use my mouse scroll wheel to select my track colors here. Or if you hold down Alt or Option and just click, you could set the track color here as well. And if these events haven't been colorized, they will automatically assume the track colors unless they've specifically been colorized. So if I select this event and I color this event orange, when I go to the track and I change the colors, holding down the Alt or Option key, that particular event, since I've specifically colored that event, will maintain its color, and the other tracks will change based upon the track selection color because these events have not specifically been colored. They're assuming the track color. So let me know if that's helpful for you. That's from SE Tracks. All right, wonderful to see Tiago checking in from Brazil. All right, we're seeing Jazz Dude recommending a VST3 version of the Fairlight, and also we see Terry Gray says his Arturia stuff always makes it onto mixes. We see Pertti Komenen checking in and sending greetings from Finland. Thanks for joining us today. So we see, hey Greg, Cubase 14 Pro Hallian 7 on Mac. Is there a way to tweak a Hallian bass, say my electric bass VX, so that the sustain dies out sooner, like a IRL bass with muting? All right, so let's check it out. All right, so we'll load up the electric bass VX and Alright, let me just turn the volume up here. Alright, so you want the sound to die out early. Alright. Some of these may be a little more fixed. Let me just see if we go into I'm going to try in Hallian Sonic as well, see if there's other choices, since it'll work in either. Alright, so let's say if we come here to our program, let's Alright, so it's not a filter, let's try the amplifier. So it looks like if you maybe adjust the attack and release. So let's say if I have my attack and release here. So I'll just kind of click a note so you can see it. Now let's adjust my attack and release to the smallest value. Versus if I adjust my attack and release higher. You see how that rings more. So maybe in the amplifier section, just come here. So maybe adjust the attack and release right there in the amplifier section and see if that does the trick for you, Gerald. Great to have you on from Martinez, California. All right, James Daly just says, my band plays in 432 tuning when we play live. What would be the best way to bring wave files up to 440? I could add keys or overdub, so I can add keys or overdub. All right, so let's say if I want to, I have an audio file that's playing back, let's say at the wrong... So let's say we're at 432. Now I'm in a production world. I want everything. I'll just do like a new project here that's not unmixed. Alright, so what you could do is you'll see that when you select the audio files, you could do like a transpose. and that's going to be by semitones, and then you have a fine tune right next to it. So if you wanted this to go up from like 432 to 440, you could just go to the fine tune and enter 8 as a value. Now it's going to play up 8. So now we're up 33 semitones. So just kind of select the file here. And let's come over here. I'll just quickly. So you can see this one is 8, up 8 cents. This one is, let's say, at 0 cents. So we could say so now this is 8 cents higher. We listen to the original. Let's say it was tuned to 432. So just select the event here, go to fine tune, enter a value of 8. So if you want to listen to those together, you should get a nice chorusing effect. The original pitch and raised 8 cents. And we can do just a quick preference here. Just enable solo on selected track. So now that's the original. That's up 8 cents. And if you're to play both of them together. So again, just go to select the event or events and go to fine tune and knock it up 8. All right, so we see from Val, says about my MIDI question, that was the question. I clicked please do not show again, but selected the wrong option. So yeah. So let me know if that preference helped. Green Gangrene asks, hey G, is it all possible to avoid massive tempo changes and make them almost unnoticeable when using time warp to align the grid with video markers? So sure. So, it depends on what level that you're kind of doing it at. So let's say if I'm here and let's say I import a video file. All right, and let me just match the frame rate. So let's come over. Okay, so say we're. So it's really kind of, whatever. So let's say if we have this in musical mode. So now, depending on how much, when we do, let's say our warping, and I'll put this into warp grid mode. What we do is just simply come over and we could just say, okay, this is where I want measure, or I'll just take it out of musical mode here. So I want, measure 82 to be here. Let me just, so as we go to our, it's whatever. So if we move something really far, realize that is, obviously going to create a different tempo change. That could be more extreme than other ones. But as we kind of come here, you could just, whatever value that you're working with, and this could also be down to, when we choose to do, let's say, quarter notes, that you could move kind of, whatever value that you kind of want to have set to. So let's see if I move this to beat. Now I could move just individual beat as well. So it gets extreme when you move it by extreme amounts, but you don't necessarily have to move it by extreme amounts. So maybe it's, instead of that being 4 beats, that's 8 beats, and you just kind of move along and find the next tempo change to make it smooth when you're doing the time warp. But if you're trying to match it to specific elements in the video, maybe go down and use the beat instead of always having to use bars, so you don't have such massive tempo changes. And realize that, everything, tempo changes in a scene are always going to breathe a little bit. So I've seen lots of film composers that make themselves tap on their desk just to get, like, as they're watching the film the first time, just to try to get like a feel for roughly what, like a ballpark, what the tempo is, and maybe they'll record that into MIDI and do a MIDI tempo and then tweak from there. But, so it doesn't have to be extreme when you're doing those changes. All right, so we see Roland Stuff just says, thanks for answering both my questions today, Greg. Got to dash out now, but we'll hear the rest on catch up. Like button, folks. All right, so wants everyone to hit the like button. All right, great to see Sound Foundry Studios back. We see Matt Elston on, Mark Rabin. Everyone give a big woof to Mark Rabin's dog, Stella. See, Mark Rabin saw a grizzly bear yesterday. And it says still wanted to hug it, and the bear wanted to hug Stella, so I intervened. We're glad Stella is safe. So my chat field jumped. All right, I think I found my spot. All right, Val asks, says, question, can we have MIDI parts have the same name as the area of the arranger track they are in? Okay, so let's say I want to come here, let's say for this example, and let's add an arranger track. Okay, so let's say all right, so let's say I want to do a quick arranger track on this, so I will grab my pencil tool and let's just draw in. Let's give this our intro. All right, and let's call this our verse 1. And you can hold down Alter Option to give it a name. All right, and we'll call this, let's say, a pre-chorus. And we'll say this is our chorus. Okay. So I guess I don't think there's a way to automatically create like a MIDI event and capture the name automatically. But let's go ahead and just add, let's say, an instrument track. So I think if we hit P and double click that we could automatically set the event. So if I wanted to come here and just name and copy the name of that. So again, hit P, double click, and then we could, but I don't think that there's a way to automatically extract the names from that. So if I say, okay, let's go to verse 1, you probably could come up here, copy, hit the letter P, double click, and paste in a description name. But I don't think that there is an automatic way of doing that. So let me know if that's kind of what if that's what you want to do, Val. All right, so we see Graham Witcher is going to leave the live stream for a bit to prepare dinner. Great to see you on. All right, Rishab Saxena asks, can we group certain plugins and bypass them together? So I think that we could bypass like all the plugins in the same slot. So let's come over here. Let me just add a couple fake audio tracks. So I'll just come here. All right, so let's say if I have all of these particular plugins here, so let's go to the Project Logical Editor. So we can say we want to transform. We'll say our media type is going to be equal. We'll say our container type is equal to a track. All right, and let's see if we just do it in here. So let's say track operation, enable insert slot by number. So let's say we want to toggle insert slot 3. All right, so now I could turn off all insert slots 3. So we could enable, disable by the slot number, but not necessarily, okay, I have this selected and insert 4, insert 2, insert 3, insert 5 on different tracks, but we could do it by the slot number. So again, we can say transform container type is equal to track operation, enable insert slot by number, and then we could choose to toggle, and then we could just say I want to take all insert slots 3 or all insert slots 2 off. I could just come over here and save that and trigger it from particular keyboard shortcuts if needed. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Rishab. All right, so we see Watch Addicts 12 says same here on Nectar, never moved it. Usually sporadically looks brand new. So. And we see Yami says Nectar, says wait the Isodope plugin. So it's probably Nectar controllers. I think it's Nektar. So. Okay, we see Pablo is back. All right, you see Uno Memento just says he got his boat out on the lake in Finland, and he says, let the summer begin. All right, Watch Addicts 12 says, Greg, I'm a frustrated finger drummer for a few years now. I've been so tempted to pick up the Simon Phillips brushes jazz library. I would have to learn the Cubase interface or their, let's see, there's continuation here. Are there presets such as Native Instrument does in their drum instruments, or do I get samples of Simon Phillips, or do you have to program all of your beats or become a finger drummer? And there will be a next generation MIDI strummer for acoustic. All right, so you don't have to program beats with Simon Phillips jazz drums to kind of start off with. So you could check out. So let's go ahead and just open it up. So when you get the Simon Phillips jazz drums, not only do you get his sounds, which are always great, but you get Simon Phillips playing them as well. So let's come over here to add instrument track. So we'll go to Groove Agent SE, as everyone has that. So when we come over here, so let's say, okay, we want Boulagoo brush. So now when I hit play, so we have intros, and it'll give you kind of like a tempo indication. So for each of these patterns here, you'll have kind of intros, endings, and you'll have these patterns. Now these patterns can have multiple levels of intensity. Think of the dynamics here. And you can have 16 levels of complexity. Here we have 12. So if you want something more complex, less complex. So if you want it to be very complex and quiet, or less complex and louder. And that's for each of these yellow patterns. So you could just come over here. Now these blue patterns will just be fills. So we can say, okay, every 4 bars, do one of the fills randomly. So if we wanted to go to a different, let's say a Bossa Nova brush. And if you wanted to do just like full swings, brush. So this way you just kind of turn it on. You can say follow transport, and when you hit play, then you'll have the drums automatically play, and then you have the ability to automate to kind of tweak out your different parameters. So you don't have to be a finger drummer. You could just buy the Simon Phillips jazz drum kits. You get lots of great content with it. And, you know, not only the samples and the sounds, but you'll get all of the wonderful playing of Simon Phillips. Super nice guy. Had the pleasure of meeting him and told me all sorts of great stories about John Entwistle and the Who. So, and just incredibly humble guy. So, all right. So we see Yami says, I'm totally new here coming from FL. So welcome to the live stream, and please feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll hope you get up to speed quickly on your Cubase so that you're a happy Steinberg customer. Welcome to the community. All right, so we see from Pablo's this question, how to synchronize the full mix console with the lower zone console. So the lower zone console, if it's going to be synchronizing with visibility, that will always be, let me just open up a different project here. So any project that you have here will automatically, so this lower zone, if we're talking about synchronizing the visibility, these two will always be in synced. So this particular mix console, so when I come here and add a track or take a track away from visibility, these are inherently in sync because they kind of are occupying the same space. But if we go to, and we could also choose to synchronize, and this was before we had the lower zone mix console. We could also choose to synchronize these settings when we go into mix console 1. So we say, okay, let's go to our mix console. Now only those particular tracks are synchronized. But by default, the lower zone is always going to be in sync with this particular visibility setting on a project window. And you could choose to have other mix consoles follow that or not to. So let me know if that makes sense, Pablo. All right, so we see from Watch Addicts 12 says next generation MIDI strummer for acoustic guitar. Anything you guys are working on? So there's lots of great stuff that's already available in like some of the MIDI plugins, and if you have also like within Hallian Sonic, you get the Flex Phraser. So let me just. So let's say if I want to come over here to my nylon guitar. So we could just kind of come over here and just say, okay, I want to do like country guitar. And as you would play chords. So I'll just come over here. So as you would just. So I'm just holding a chord down. So let me just open up so you can see it a little easier. So if I just come here and just play. And then we can say, okay, I want this to be more eighth note based. So say I want this to be eighth note triplets, you know, we could just come over and. Now we could also, let's say we'll take this off, and if we wanted to go into Howling and Sonic itself, we could go to the program and we could go to the flex phraser. And once we open up this, so again, just kind of playing back simple chords. I'll move this over here so you guys can see. We could just say, okay, I want to come over to, guitar and keyboard. And let's say, okay, let's get strumming. And now I could just kind of come over here and so you could have various strumming patterns that are all part of the, in conjunction with the flex phraser as well. All right, so we see Mark Raven says, piggybacking on the color question, can you lock the upper region of a project window? Can you lock a region? So if you wanted to lock an event, so let's say, okay, I want this event not to be able to be moved, we could just choose to lock, and let's say the position of it. So now I can't lock it in. If we have, and then we could choose to lock different aspects of it. If we have a divided track list, let's say we go to project and we say divide track list, we could have events that are kind of locked at the top so that I can't make an adjustment here. So let's say if I want to take this track, I'm going to move this track to the top. So while I can move it while the top is active, when I'm working here, those changes. So if I come here and say, okay, let's nudge these particular events, even though this is selected, it's not going to nudge until this is the active part, then that can nudge. But even if this is selected and this is, let's say, the active zone of working, I can just nudge those events and not affect other events in the divided track list above it. So they work independently that way. All right, Val asks, what is the link panners function under preferences VST? Okay, so let's say I have my audio track here. I'm going to go to my let's add an effects channel to this. So let's say, okay, we'll do a studio delay. Okay, so let's come over, let's go to the settings and say VST and activate link panner, or if it's, all right, so let's say if it's, so there's two different link panner modes, so I'll show you both. So when I come over here and we go to panning on our effects ends, that when I pan the track, we could choose to right click, let me just, but here we could have the sends automatically follow the panning. Let me just see if I could. All right, so let's say my send is here. I could just copy the standard pan setting. We can't have those linked. Let me just. I'm just having brain cramp on that. Sorry, let me just come over here. So let's say if we, right, so I'm just having a brain cramp on that, so sorry. Now let's say and I think what the preference is doing, let me just see if there's a preference I'm flaking on. All right, but I think maybe the preference that you're asking for here is the activate link panners for new tracks. So let's say I have this panner, this effect send set for studio delay on send 1. Now I'm going to add additional tracks here. So I will come over, let's add 2 audio tracks. So when I go to these audio tracks and I open them up, that this effect send is automatically kind of assigned to the same slot in all newly added tracks. So that's what that preference does. All right. All right, so we see Yami just says the primary reason I'm switching is because Cubase is more optimized, and I heard live recordings is great, and of course I'll discover new things as well. So just welcome to the community, and ask any question, regardless of if it's the most basic question you think. Everyone has gone through the same learning curve you have. All right, so we see Pastoral Apologetics just says greetings and salutations from Southeast Texas. All right, Vishnu VTS 404 says, could you please show us how we can add a sample in Hallian 7 and work on that? All right, so let's add a Hallian 7 instance here. Okay. All right, so we'll just come here, let's say Hallian 7, and we want to quickly, so we could actually just kind of come over here, say, okay, we want to do just a sample instrument. And the beauty of this is I could take any file that's on my system here, and I could just drag and drop. And now that file, when we just is immediately... So when we go to the mapping, we can see that we have that single sample that's immediately mapped to our different keys. And if we wanted to come over and do different sample editing techniques on that, we could come over and choose our playback modes. If we want it to be reverse, one shot, if we want it to be able to do different looping functions, slicing, we could decompose. So all you literally have to do is just kind of drag and drop a sample in, and immediately you could just start playing it. All right. All right, reading through comments. All right, so Yami says, this stuff is actually really helpful. Love it. So that's great. All right, Pastoral Apologetics says, my questions concerns the UART2 interface, which works fine on my secondary computer, but only plays one channel right side of my main system. Both are Windows 11, the latest Yamaha drivers. So we had a similar question just at the very start of the live stream. So make sure, that check if you have the DSP mix effect software open. So let's come over. Sorry, let me just do a new Finder window. All right, so you see the DSP mix effects, and you'll see for URRT. Try making sure that this is set to initial data when you're working with it. And also, just at the very beginning, like if we were to take, like we had a question that someone was only hearing the one channel, check to make sure like in your control room there is a channels, so you could just solo, so everything could look like it's in stereo, like all the way through your signal process, through your master outputs, and everything looks kind of as expected. But you could also, in the control room, just solo particular channels here, so make sure that one of those channels isn't soloed. All right, so you see from Val, it says about my MIDI question, no, the preferences did not work. Do I have to reset my Cubase preferences? You could try to, when you start Cubase, what I would try to do is if you hold down Alt, Control, Shift, or Command, Option, plus Shift, you'll get the ability to disable the program preferences. So see if you could get it to do it while disabling the program preferences, and see if it works, and then you can know that if you rebuild your preferences, that it will bring that particular function back for you. So I would suggest, starting Cubase with the preferences disabled to see if it gives you kind of what you want or are expecting. Okay, so Igor H. Radic asks, under Tool, there's a volume VST. Can I use it at channels and mix bus? So yeah, so let's say if I was just coming over here, let's say I have this cello part playing. Let's say here. So the volume is going to be just a plugin. So we'll see it under Tools, Volume. And this is often just will allow you to control the volume just of that particular. So it's just a plugin, and this is often used for doing modulation. So if I wanted to come here to this particular track and say, okay, I want to assign my volume control, that I don't have to affect the channel fader for automation, that I could just create this automation from a plugin. If we want to do different shapes here. And we can say, okay, let's do this every measure. So that's the intention of the volume plugin. It's it's kind of designed to so that you wouldn't have to affect the channel volume when doing kind of typical LFO and modulator type functions. Mark Raven says that he restrings, I guess, guitars during the live stream. It's a good thing to do. Ben Tyerman just says, I'm finding out the score editor is buggy on Mac OS. Sometimes it crashes for no reason. So there was a new announcement today and a new release today with a lot of performance and stability issues resolved with the score editor. So make sure you download the 14.03. I think, Ben, if memory serves right, I think you were also looking for the lexicon plugins. I'm missing those on Cubase, but they were recently updated to VST3, just in case you didn't hear. All right, and I also see just next comment it says also tried a new 14.03, still the same bugs. So if you want to send me some of the issues that you're running into, I'd be happy to look into it and pass it along to the team. So you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right, so James Daly asks, what do the different colors in Very Audio mean? Which means you're out of pitch. So a lot of them don't mean that necessarily that you're out of pitch, but there's some different choices. So let's take a look. All right, so I'm going to first kind of make a chord track from the chords here. All right, so now when we're in Very Audio, you'll have different coloring options. So one is you can just colorize kind of automatically, and that could be derived maybe from the colors of the event. I could say, okay, now this event is yellow, so all the events are yellow. So we could do it like that. And then probably the more relevant ones come from, we could have each pitch be a different color. But the ones that I find very useful are the scale and chords. So if I come here, we have a chord track that we derived from, let's say, the piano part in this example. So now we'll come here to our Very Audio. So when we come over, let's choose to do it by scales and chords. And as we do this, if I move a particular note, we can move it, and where it turns kind of red means that it's out of key, and green means that it's in the key. Now we could also choose to come over and say, let's go to the Very Audio, and we have a scale assistant. So we could say, let's use the chord track. So we see that we're going to have, and we could see kind of the different color schemes for this. I think if we go to settings, trying to remember. So we can see that we have notes that are going to be kind of all right. So let's say we're coming over here. We're in the key of G major, so we could actually kind of set our key here. So we can see that F natural is out of key, but F sharp is in key. So green is out of key, kind of orange is, or green is going to be within the particular key, and the orange is out of key. So as we come over here, you may say, okay, as we make adjustments, we could see exactly which notes are in key. And sometimes you can get a note if you have a chord that is, let's say, like a chord to add color that's out of the key of the particular song. Then you could have a note that's within the chord, but not within the defined key. So when we go to the very audio, and we'll come over here, so when you see this, it's not necessarily showing that it's in color, but if you go to the scales chords, you could see if notes are, as you copy them, if they're in scale or out of scale or out of the particular, if we're using the chord track, out of the particular chord, or within the chord, but within the particular key as well. So these are within the key, these are within the chord. And if we move to a red, that's out of key and out of the chord. So the colors don't necessarily indicate the amount of a tune, of the amount of that a note or segment is out of pitch, but if it's near the key of the song. All right, wonderful to see Charles K. checking in from the UK. Thanks for joining us today. All right. All right, so we see from Ricky Tera, says, if I made some offline processing with multiple clips and sliced through single clip, F7 and select to continue, it shows error, but the new selected new version, it works, but I have to delete the process and select NV. All right, so let me try. So I'm not sure what NV means. All right, so let's say, let's do a new project here. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's do some slices. Okay, so to see if I made some offline processing and multiple clips, slice through single clip, F7 and select continue, it shows error, but selected new version, it works, but I have to delete the process. All right, so I'm not sure, let's say if we slice this up. So I'm going to come over here, let's get a hit points, and we will create slices. Okay, so I'm not sure if you created slices like this, and now we want to do direct offline processing. Okay, so it says slice through single clip and select continue. It shows error, selected new version, it works, but I have to delete the process. So let me just come over here and say let's fade out. I will come over here, let's reverse. Let's apply an effect. All right, and now let's come over and play. There's a fade out. And let's go ahead and put a few and let's go ahead and throw maybe a delay on there, make it short delay. So this will be our fade out. We'll have shimmer reverb, we'll have delays coming on these. All right, so I'm just going to reread it. So it says, if I made some offline processing of multiple clips, slice through, single clip, F7, and select continue, it shows error, but select a new version, it works, but I have to delete that process. So let me just select multiple processes here on throw a chorus on those. And we have multiple process here on a reverse and a shimmer, and let's throw a studio delay on there. All right, and let's listen to it. Fade out with 3 processes here. So let's say if I select this, I could now come over, let's remove the shimmer, and we can see that that processing is done. So let me know if I'm approaching it wrong, Ricky, or or let me know if the process I'm doing is kind of off the path that you were working with. All right, Rob Fell 68 says, hello, can you please talk about the new Cubase update features? So we talked about this a little earlier in the live stream, so let me just open up the 14.03 list. So I'm just Googling 14.03 release notes. And the first thing that comes up is Steinberg here. So you see the new score editor fixes and improvements here. And more Dorco project import improvements. DAW project functionality, more audio processing and editing. Some enhancements with Media Bay, MIDI and instruments, overall stability, video engine improvements. And other enhancements. So those are new things that were released in 14.03, so a lot of great new functionality and enhancements with that. All right, so we see Recycle checking in from Finland. You see Pablo just says amazing library. Might be dealing with the Simon Phillips. See Watch Addicts 12 says, Simon, how cool is it like having Simon come to your living room? That is pretty cool. So. All right, so we see Watch Addicts 12 says, one time I opened Groove Agent and got very scared. I closed it and it was okay then. So nothing really to be scared of. All right, so Rick from Bratman Studio says, "Hey Greg, wondering why there are up to 4 mix consoles. What's the purpose of multi-consoles?" So the purpose of multi-consoles is, let's say if we have a number of audio tracks, we have lots of buses. Let me just add a bunch of different tracks here. So I want to see, let's add 24 groups. I have, let's say, a number of effects channels. Okay, so now I could come over here, and for like our clients that are running large setups, we could say, okay, when I go to Mix Console 1, I want to see only particular functions. So we can say, okay, I only want to see audio tracks. Okay, when I go to Mix Console 2, I only want to see my groups. So when you go to our channel configuration here, you can say I want to see only group channels. And when I go to input to Mix Console 3, I only want to see my effects channels. And Mix Console 4, I think this was Trevor Morris had requested this, kind of film composer, or TV and film composer, well known for doing the Vikings. And here, when I'm recording, I only want to see input channels. So now I could just kind of toggle back and forth without having to constantly switch and have different presets. If that's too hard, we could just have different mix consoles showing different types of data. So that's the intention of why you could have multiple mix consoles available in your Cubase or Nuendo setup. All right, great to see Benny checking in from Sweden. All right, and we see Captenergy Music checking in for our special Wednesday live stream from outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, not too far from where I live. So we see Watch Addicts just says Flex Fraser. That's very cool. Was not aware. So yeah, just a lot of great stuff you could do. Mark Rabin just saying, Greg, that was super helpful and intuitive. Exactly what I was needing. Thank you. So you're welcome. Wish I knew what it was about now. Probably 20 minutes ago or so. About 30 minutes ago. Captenergy Music just says, I wonder when new Absolute is coming. I feel like it's been a bit. So it's really been about maybe a little over a year with the addition of FM7 when that came out and Hallion 7. So hasn't been that long. All right, so we see Val just says, thanks for the answers, Greg. Mark Raven just says, remember, only Greg and Jazz Dude were both born with Cubase knowledge. Everyone else has to learn. So I did a lot of learning. I just did it earlier than other people. But it came quickly to me. So I'll try to be as smart as Jazz Dude one day when I grow up. Right, sorry, my chat field just jumped. Let me find my spot. Sorry about that. All right, almost there. Okay, so we see a question from Watch Addicts. It says, Greg, I have timestamp enabled. Could you say again how I download a timestamp copy of today's show? Thanks. So generally, if you go, let's say we come over here. Let me break this space-time continuum here. Go to my live stream while I'm on the live stream. All right, so let's say you go to the Cubase channel here, go to the live section, and let's say we want to go back to May 30th. At this point, you'll see always pinned to the top is a comment, and you could just come over here and copy it into like a Word document if you wanted to. So copy and paste it into a Word document, and this is the timestamp that you could navigate to particular moments in time. You could also go to, as we mentioned before, cubaseindex.com, and if I spell it right, that would help. And here you could just search for, timestamps based on years. So if you wanted to just search, you could just hit Control or Command F and just say, okay, I'm looking for, let's say, export. And this could immediately take you to 161 matches for export. And then you can say, how to export a few selected tracks in our project without deactivating. And then you could just click there on the timestamp, and it'll take you right to that portion of the video. So look in any of the comments for any of the live streams when you go to youtube.com/cubase/lot and click in the live area. And you'll always see that all the timestamps are here ready to be copied away. So let me know if that's helpful for you. See, Pablo just says, yes, I have those lexicons. So he says working in Silicon and VST3. Yeah, I was waiting a long time for those. I would just kind of check back every couple weeks. So I'm glad that they are expensive plugins. So, all right, Mark Rabin just says we need 2 likes. Stella says lick the like. So if you haven't hit the like button, make sure you do that. All right, Meridian Audio Studio says, how can I synchronize Cubase with video editing software such as DaVinci Resolve? So I believe DaVinci Resolve will, you could have it receive and follow or kind of send MIDI timecode information between Cubase and DaVinci Resolve. So you would just synchronize via MIDI timecode. And in Cubase, you would just, if you wanted Cubase to follow DaVinci Resolve, you could go to your project synchronization setup, say, okay, MIDI timecode is coming from this MIDI device from DaVinci Resolve. It's sending MIDI timecode to this port. We're going to look for MIDI timecode, and at that point, we tell Cubase to follow external sync, activate external sync from the transport menu right there. Okay, so we see NV from Randy Tara just says new version. So, and Ricky is just saying he was out of words. So, understand. All right, we see Peter checking in from Montreal. Says feels like 35 degrees Celsius in Montreal today. He sure picked a terrible day to be working on his deck. All right. All right, so we see from Ricky Terras about when we're doing the offline processing. It says, please select multiple clips and apply offline processing. All right, so let's take a look. Still have it open here. So I did select the multiple clips here, but I'll do it again. Let's do some more. So let's say I want to take these clips. Just select them here. All right, so I'm going to select those particular clips, and let's go to our direct offline processing. And now when I go to process, let's go ahead and add gain. So we'll take away 8 dB of gain to all the clips. Let's select these clips and reverse those. And now if we want to play again, I could come over here. Fade out. So those all seem to kind of play back and function as expected. Ricky, so let me know if I'll keep this project open. See, Captain Energy Music is happy for his selection of limoncello ice cream from Michael Teams. Okay, so you see from Ricky Tara, it says 3 split on single audio and select all. And F7, let's say normalize, select number. All right, so just come here, let's normalize. Just get a process here. All right, and let's make it minus 24. Minus 6. So let me know if that's still, let me know if that's still, I'll keep this project open if I'm still doing something wrong. All right, so we see Tim K's made it back for the last part for the rest of the live stream. Hope your oldest performance went well. My son going through his promotion ceremony from 6th to 7th grade on Friday. All right, artist known as Love wants everyone to please push the like button. All right, we see Gareth just popping in to say hi. It's like he's still fighting a virus, so he's off to bed. We hope you recover quickly. So Peter is wishing Gareth to get well soon. Okay, so Gareth says he'll have side A of Agartha with Pablo's drums. That'll be good. I have 5 or 6 songs done. for bass parts. All right, and Michael Teams has granted Gareth 1 gallon of getting better all the time ice cream for him, for Gareth and his daughter Lola. Okay, reading through comments. We see Jazz Dudes posted a link to Trevor Morris. Yeah. Very talented composer. Let's see, Val just says, Greg watching a Cubase live stream while on a Cubase live stream while streaming Cubase live. Yeah, I'm surprised the whole world didn't stop. All right. Mark Rabin just says, this is so helpful with the index demo. He says, very helpful. I'm a proficient copier. Yeah, many of my friends learned that skill in school. All right, so Bratman Studio says, helpful. Cubase Index is a work of art. And we see Mark Rabin just says, what a tremendous feat for every stream. Thank you, Greg. The indexing is appreciated. Yeah, so I think it makes the live streams kind of a bit more kind of evergreen content that, if someone did all the indexes, that that'd be fine. It's not the most fun thing to do after, usually take a dinner break and then do the indexes, and takes, several hours to get it all typed up with the right times and the formatting and everything. But I think it makes the live streams much more useful for people to be able to refer to the index. All right, Keith Young just says, hello, Greg. I think my question got lost. Sorry if I missed it. Is there a quick way of turning off all plugins across a project? Thank you. So if you want to, if you have multiple plugins in a particular project, let's come over. So if you're in the mix console, you could come over here and you'll see kind of at the top where you could say, okay, I want to bypass, and I think you have to hold down the Alt or Option key, but you could say, let me make this but you could come over here and bypass all the inserts, bypass all the EQs, bypass the channel strips, bypass the sends for all of your various projects here. So if you just click here, you could just say, okay, I want all my sends, all of my channel strips, all the EQs, all the inserts disabled right up here. And those, if you don't see them at the top, they're going to be, I believe they're called channel states. State buttons. So if you right click at the top here, if you don't see those functions, right click, and then where you see the state buttons, make sure that those are checked, and then you could come right over here, bypass the modulators, inserts, EQs, channel strip, and sends. So you could do that one at a time, just right there, and bypass all of your processing like that. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Keith. Great to see you on. All right, so we see from Ricky Tara, says it's still wrong. Auto apply is off for me. A dialog pop-up says, do you want to continue, new version, cancel, select, continue. It shows I mark. Okay, shows a question mark. Okay, so let me go back to that project. Okay, so let me come over here. Let's go to activate the project. We'll come over here to F7. All right, so I'm going to turn the auto apply off. Let me select multiple files at the beginning here. Let's do invert phase across those. All right, so come, let's say process, let's, I'll reverse those. So it all seems to still be kind of working as expected here, Ricky. All right, so we see Quellen. It says, hi, Greg. In the mix consoles, the delay option, it shows how much delay the insert plugin is causing. What are the 2 and the 1 star after the ME value meaning, and what to do with the phase issue? All right, so let's say if we have a number of plugins on a particular process here. So I'm going to go just to this particular track. Let's run some. All right, so let's come over here. Let's set up our sections, and we'll see our latency. All right, so now when I click here, okay, okay, so the delay option shows how much delay the insert plugins is causing. What are the 2 and the 1 star after the ME value meeting? All right, so this is just the milliseconds. All right, and I think that, so let's say, let me find something that has some latency in it. I think it's indicating if it's going to be bypassed with let me just put in another dynamics. Let's say maybe a multi-band envelope shaper. And I think when we are there that it might indicate if it's going to be bypassed. So the ones with 2 milliseconds, let's see. So when we see the 2 asterisk versus 1, that means that when we turn on the constrained delay compensation, if there's 2 asterisk, that means that that plugin will be bypassed when we turn on constrained delay compensation. So we can see reverence and vocal chain, but the multi-band compressor can run in live mode. So I'm going to come over here. We turn this on. We see that those particular plugins, the reverence and the vocal chain, when we enable the constrained delay compensation, that those will be bypassed. And then when we turn that off, all of the plugins can be processed. So looking at this, when we see our 2 different asterisks, 1 asterisk means that it's going to still be available when constrained delay compensation is enabled. And if you have 2, that means that that plugin is going to be disabled as you're working with the constrained delay compensation. So let me know if I'm understanding that correctly for you. And we see just a follow-up question to this: what to do with phase issue. So any of the plugins that you have in Cubase are automatically going to be compensated for on playback. You can't necessarily do that on live input. So if we have a really heavy processing chain of latent plugins here, if you wanted to, while tracking, if you wanted to minimize the latency, you could enable the constrained delay compensation to bypass the more latent plugins, and you could set that threshold into preferences. But on playback, all this will just simply play back ahead of time so that all these plugins will play back without any phasing issues. So it's all delay compensated for you. All right, Progressive Sounded Audio asks, hi folks, loving Cubase 14 Pro and taking advantage of the Wavelab pricing. How easy it is it to transfer projects from Cubase to Wavelab? So generally, you may not process or, transition multiple projects, but let's say if I'm here, let's go back to this. If we wanted to edit directly in Wavelab, because there will be some functions, let me just go to different track. Okay, so let's say if I'm here and I wanted to edit a stereo audio file, and let's say I wanted to edit the left versus the right channel independently, one of the things that we could do is come over and say, okay, I want to take this particular project. I'm going to select that file. We go to the audio menu. So how it first started off working kind of between the two programs is we could say edit in Wavelab, and that would automatically launch Wavelab. We could make an edit of that particular file in Wavelab. So I say, okay, I just want to take just that portion of the file out, and then we could choose to automatically trigger the Cubase Nuendo update. So if we come here, we could just see that particular portion of the file could be gone. So we could synchronize kind of between the two of them. We could also come over, and I'll just do this for a small section of the audio. We could say, because Wavelab's used for mastering, when we do our export audio mixdown, I could just say after export, we want to do our stereo out. And after export, let's open in Wavelab Pro 12. So now when we export our audio, we could go directly into our mastering realm and do mastering. And with Wavelab 12, it now works as an ARA plugin. So if we come over, we could also just take a particular file here and say, okay, I want to go to my extension, and let's go to Wavelab. So when I double click, the Wavelab audio editor will in essence show up in lieu of the sample editor in our lower zone. So we could do editing directly here in Wavelab and see all of the changes automatically apply directly right there. So, and currently, Wavelab is celebrating its 30th anniversary. I remember when it first came out as a younger Steinberg employee. So, it's currently on promotion. So if you're interested in Wavelab, it's a great time. And I think Wavelab is kind of the delivery solution. So once you have your audio mixed down, you could export it to multiple file formats very easily, burn audio CDs, which people still do a lot. And you can just come over and have all sorts of great processing and mastering capabilities of taking multiple songs and making it into like a cohesive release. So there's a couple things that you could do and incorporate Wavelab with Cubase. All right, Mark Rabin got honeydewed, so he's going to be doing some family stuff. Thank your family for allowing you to hang out on the live stream. All right, so we have Henrik Horning just sending greetings from the Netherlands. Thanks for joining us. Brightman Studio just says went ahead and downloaded Cubase 1403 and noticed there's a Halion 7 update as well. So. All right, Pablo's leaving for dinner. All right, so Ricky Terra just says start with new audio without the auto apply. So, all right, let me just do a new project here for Ricky. All right, so auto apply is turned off. Okay, so I'm going to slice up my audio here. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up my offline processing. Auto apply isn't on. Let's select multiple events. Let's reverse. Okay, let me just select multiple events here. Okay, so let's apply that in. And let's do pitch bend. So let me know if I'm still doing it wrong, Ricky. All right. All right, Keith Young just says, thanks, Greg. Didn't know about the other processing bypass. Thanks. Brilliant. All right. All right, so I see from Quellen says I mean the millisecond have 1 star, Zoe 2 star. So let me know if the 2 stars are going to, are the ones that are going to be bypassed during the constrained delay compensation. It's a higher latency. All right. Okay, so we see from Ricky Terra, it says import audio 3, split them into multiple clips, select all, F7 offline process, auto apply is off, hit continue, when the dialog pops up, it shows error instead of 34/34. All right, so I'll do a new audio file here. All right, so I'll manually split it here. Okay, I'm going to go over here, make sure that when I open up F7, that audio apply is turned off. Okay, now I'm going to select all of these files, all these clips here. Okay, import audio 3, split to multiple clips, select all, F7 offline process. Auto apply is off. Hit continue after dialog pops up. It shows error. All right. Okay, so I'm going to reverse. And let's run it through reverb. Okay, so now I'll auto apply that. Sorry, I'll just take it off the loop. All right. So let me know if I did, seems like I did the same process you did, Ricky. And if you have like maybe a short video, if you want to send that to me, something you can maybe make in OBS, a little screen capture, be happy to kind of take a look at it. And you could send it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, Michael Teams asks, how long is the WaveLab sale going on? I think it's through all of June. It might end July 1st, I believe. But you could check just to make sure. All right, so we have George checking in from Germany, saying hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. See, Jazz Do confirmed July 1st. Okay, Ricky Terra just says don't use slice, split. Use split 3, the scissor tool. And it says, man, I'm sorry, bro, this question is dragging on too long. So let me know. Yeah, because I did the scissors tool with that the last time. It's no problem. We want to make sure that we're helping you out. All right, wonderful to see John Costigan checking in from Kenosha. All right, Quellen asks, what's with third-party plugins and sound effects? Can this cause phase issue in Cubase? Again, Cubase, like when it's starting up, the very first time that you have a plugin instantiated or installed, Cubase will, like the first time you start Cubase, so it scans the plugins a little longer. It's actually going through and measuring the latency of each plugin. So when you add like a bunch of new plugins, it will go through the first time it's starting Cubase and it will measure the latency of the plugin. So when you're playing it back in Cubase, again, as if it's playing back already recorded audio, it's going to be time compensated for. So you don't have to do any worries. But if you're recording audio with sound effects and you have like a reverb that has a lot of latency, that can cause when you're monitoring the incoming signal, that could cause some phase issues, and it's just what we have to do with physics. A lot of plugins don't have any latency at all these days, So you could do that without any phase issues, but on playback, there's no phase issues with, included or third-party plugins. It's automatically compensated for. All right, so Val says, can I go into the XML file and reset the section with a new MIDI part to be asked the question about extending again? You might be able to. I'm not sure exactly what part of which XML file. I could see if I could dig into it, but make sure that it's the actual message, so I don't kind of go down a rabbit hole for the wrong message. So if you have that option, and make sure it's like the extending to other parts, and I'd be happy to kind of do some research for you, Val. All right, James Daly asks, if I add a video of the performance into a project, then add recorded tracks from the gig, will the tempo detect also stretch the video and video audio? So the video doesn't stretch in Cubase. The vast majority of workflow issues, you don't do the video editing inside the DAW. Maybe you cut out like an end or beginning or a part in the middle, but when you're doing tempo detection, you're doing tempo detection of the audio, and the audio is probably already locked to the video. So at that point, it's not changing anything. You're just developing a tempo map of the existing recording. So that shouldn't affect the video, nor would I want the video to be affected. But let me know if there's a specific workflow issue that you're running into. All right, Drums Clark asks, I now have Cubase 14. What do I do now? Hit record. Have fun. Write wonderful music. Capture all of your ideas. Unleash your creativity. So, you have such an amazing tool. Just, hit record. You're not going to set off a nuclear bomb. You're not going to break anything. Just experiment. Learn little bits and pieces. Expand. Say, okay, I wanted to learn this today. Learn how to do that. I don't understand this. You don't have to master the entire program your first month. All you have to do is figure out how to get something done. Take little bits, little tasks. Think of you can make the analogy of learning Cubase is an incredible instrument. So when you sat down on drums, you probably weren't playing Clyde Stubblefield or Neil Peart stuff or Led Zeppelin songs the very first time that you sat down. So you probably learned a simple song and you expanded. You increased your technique. You increased your understanding of what your instrument could do. So don't feel like you have to have it all mastered, but just hit record and have fun and enjoy, all the capabilities that you could do. Artists in the past would have drooled and dreamed of having this functionality in, what could be running on your laptop now. And as Val says, enjoy. All right, Johnny Ravioli asks, do you know if the 40% off after the free trial on Cubase 14 Pro also applies to the upgrade from 13 Pro? So I don't know if there's currently a promotion going on from the trial version, but generally most of the promotions, some promotions will include updates from Cubase 13. I think the last one that we did in April included, not only partner products, but you could update your, from Cubase 13 to Cubase 14, not just new versions, but updates and upgrades as well. So I don't think that there's currently a Cubase promotion. I think the current promotion is for WaveLab, but a lot of times when there is a promotion, it will be for updates as well as new versions. Okay, so we see from Ricky Terra says, why do I get the dialogue window then? Yeah, you did the same way. Yeah, that's the only way. We'll mail you. Yeah, so if you get a chance to just do a little video, and do like a full screen capture, that would be helpful as well. I'd be happy to look into it for you. So we see Bratman Studio says, if we have time or another time, I'd love to see some demos of Steinberg synths like Poly, Wave, Revo, Create, Dark Planet, Hypnodance, Tribework, Pad Motion, FM, Lab, Colors, etc. So I'll see if I could get some that are done, but some of them aren't Steinberg instruments. So I think the Poly, Wave, and Create are like done by Danny Lux, who's a incredible TV composer, probably one of the most prolific TV composers. He's done shows like Grey's Anatomy for 20 years and stuff like that, and has been kind of working since he was 18 or 19 years old, and worked with Mike Post. Started off working with Mike Post when he was a teenager. So like some of those instruments he made, so sometimes they're sold through the Steinberg marketplace, but not necessarily a Steinberg product. But if you have like a particular question on one of them, you could just email me. I'd be happy to prepare something for you. All right, so we see Michael Teams just saying on another note, is producer from Dallas, from the Dallas band, won Best Recording Engineer at the New Mexico Music Awards on Saturday. Congratulations to George Mon. Yeah, so I saw George posted that, so I was really happy for him to get recognized for all of his efforts. Super nice guy and really talented. So you see from Val, just asking question, is there something like a reset all pop-ups again? So let me see, there might be a preference. Let me see if I can take a look. So some of the preferences will cover that. Let me just... Let's see if there's anything. Just take a look here, going through the preferences. I don't... Yeah, send me just a brain cramp email reminder, Val, to clubcubase@steinberg.de, and I'd be happy to do some research on it for Friday's live stream. All right, wonderful to see Fred Corey on. It says, hi Greg, when using the media bay, if I want to make folders for specific instrument tracks or bass or synth, etc., do I move the instruments or copy the instruments? All right, so let's say if I come over here, okay, so if I'm just seeing if it's user presets or if Fred specifies if it's user presets or not. Okay, so let's all right, so let's come over to like a VST instrument here and say, okay, we want to go to Pad Shop. Okay, so let's take a look. Let me just go to Media Bay and see if we could copy or paste those. So let's okay, so let's see if we can. All right, so let's say if I come here and I usually there's so I generally, Fred, don't make my own folders. So if you want to make folders for specific instrument tracks. Okay, so let's say if you want to make folders for specific instrument tracks like bass or synth, do I move the instruments or copy the instruments? So probably what I would do, let's say if I'm here and let's say I go to Hallian and I make a virtual analog synth. So let's say Alright, and let's say we want to do just a quick filter on it. Alright, so if I was saving this and if I wanted to put it into a folder, what I might do if I wanted to organize it specifically in folders, which I probably would just kind of use the tagging and tag, and search that way. But if we wanted to come over and say, okay, let's export selected tracks. We could say, we could copy the media files and we'll come over here. And then I would just say, okay, let's go to desktop. I would put it into new folder and I would say Fred Corey. And I wanted to come over here. Let's make a new folder here for bass, analog, and and come here and save this XML. So say HAL 7 bass synth. And then if I wanted to, you can't necessarily search for MediaBay for track archives, but now if you just come over to say, okay, I want to import my track archive, we could say, okay, here's my bass analog, and I'll just do this on a brand new project. So let's import our track archive. I'll say open. And then we'll have our same Hallian instrument or synth that we've made here. But I would probably personally let Cubase just save the preset and do the tagging, and then use the MediaBay databasing function within Cubase. That's what I would do, Fred. So we see Val says he studied bass and music production. Cubase is still the best instrument. All right, we see Jazz Dude says creates a great tool. Pablo is back with coffee. Pablo's question is, what's the best way to exchange a mix in Cubase and Wavelab? I mean, work in Cubase and master in Wavelab. So probably, and since we just had Fred Corey ask his question, and Fred has always been incredibly generous providing projects for us, I would probably come over here and just choose to revert this. So the project we've all heard so many times over 5 years was recorded by Fred and donated for demonstration purposes. So I'll just take my left and right files here. I'll say let's get a file, export audio mixdown, and then in the post process I would choose to open in Wavelab Pro 12. So I would do all my multi-track mixing, editing here, and now I would do the kind of stereo processing straight into Wavelab 12 right here, so that we could be able to do all of the typical mastering functions. So I would do an export audio mixdown straight to Wavelab 12. That would be my approach. All right, see Michael Teams has dinner with some graduates tonight. Wish them congratulations for us. All right, so we see Bratman Studios says, I've seen Moises and other stem splitting apps lately. Do you know how they match up to our Steinberg version? I think that most tools, I think that there's a common kind of stem separation that other programs kind of license, and that I just still think, and I haven't heard much that's been like significantly that's been better than spectral layers. And I think that since Robin is specifically working with that's his kind of sole area of focus, I think that the spectral layers still will always have an edge. All right, John Barry says, evening, Greg. What is it with preferences that seem to have such a massive influence on program stability at the point where disabling them is an option? Just curious. So sometimes, sometimes there's a lot of preferences that can get kind of altered by the operating system without so much anything that you do inside of Cubase. So that's why there's kind of a different layer of preferences. So stuff that's affected by the operating system can be, that's out of our control for how preferences can be manipulated by an operating system as something is opened. So those things, that's why we have kind of that extra layer of control. All right, so you see from Fred Corey, it just says user presets and saved instrument track. So if it's like with the media being referenced, if you want that particular event, like the notes to be incorporated, you could just kind of choose to, embed that information, or if you just want the sound to be copied, you could do that. All right, so we see from Fred, okay, great, thank you. Hope you're doing well, Fred. All right. All right, we had a couple questions that were mailed in advance, so let me get to those. All right, first question, how to see only the notes used in an event in the key editor. All right, so let's come over. All right, so let's say I open up this project and I have, let's say, lots of lovely piano parts here, but I'm seeing all these notes, all these spaces that I don't need to see. I only want to edit notes that I see here, and I don't want to see, if I have no notes on a particular pitch, I don't need to see it. I don't want to see it. So within the editor, we could come right over here and choose the pitch visibility. Now we have two different modes for the pitch visibility. One is to show pitches that only have events on them. So this way we're hiding every single note that doesn't have a note within the event. And we could also have this if we were using the scale assistant. So let's say in this instance, if we're in a key of E or whatever, we could choose to only see notes that are in the key. So you see the pitch visibility option right up top here. So you could turn that on or off. So here I can see all the notes chromatically. I could turn that on, see only the notes in the scale, or see only the pitches that have events within the particular part right there. So, or if you want to see all the notes, so again, you could turn the pitch visibility on or off in two different settings. One to see notes within the scale, and one to see notes that actually have events on them. All right, our next question. Hello, Greg. Please explain how to manage licenses so that they are not lost when reinstalling Windows, or if the hard drive fails. Would I lose a license if it's on a damaged hard drive? Or does Steinberg recognize my PC by the MAC address and associate the license with that PC, even if I've replaced the hard drive? Okay, so when we do this with the Steinberg licensing, if we come over, let me just come and we'll log into your My Steinberg account. So we'll go to steinberg.net. So let's say if you're getting a new computer and you could have 3 licenses spread across different machines, and we log into your My Steinberg account. So we'll come right over here. All right, now when we do this, we could go to, you could see your, so let's say we want to go to your products. You can see your profile. All right, so you'll say, okay, let's go to your licensed devices. It's usually right in here. Let me just. All right. So right now my license is being used on this computer, and if you want to, you could actually, so you can see all my licenses that are on this particular computer. So if you want, you could just say, you could say, if you lost access to this computer, please choose the unavailable computer and click deactivate. So you could remotely deactivate even if the computer is dead, the hard drive died, the computer was in a flood, fire, volcano, you could go back and go to that machine and deactivate the machine. And if you had 3 different computers that are deactivated at that point, you could come over. Or if you had 3 computers that were activated and one was, destroyed, and, you could simply deactivate it offline from any kind of web browser once you're logged into your My Steinberg account, and just simply choose to deactivate that particular computer, and then you could activate another computer instead. So you could do it all remotely. All right. Next question. Is it possible to export a project, i.e. a track, WAV, FLAC, MP3 with custom secret watermark if I want to share it with a partner for editing as proof that it belongs to me? Okay, so what I would do is, let's say if we are in the Media Bay. So go to Media Bay here. And let's say if we have a particular audio file, let me just go here to documents. Okay, so let's say I want to take this file and you want to kind of prove. You'll see if you go to the right hand section here, we'll see in the upper right hand corner, we could see this. So we can see our audio file, and you could come right over here and you could add custom attributes for a particular file. So if you want to put like a digital watermark or something like that, you can come over and add watermarks in your system. So say let's add a plus, and we'll make this a text, and we can say display name is who owns this file. All right, and at this point, so when we go to our different metadata here, we could actually say who owns this file, and once you're here, you can say Club Cubase. And this would probably be a metadata tag that you could choose for it to be hidden. So if you wanted to go to your custom information, so you could just say various who owns this file, uncheck that, and probably no one is going to be able to see that. But if you say who owns this file, and it's like, look, it's right here, here's the date. So you could put your own user attributes in metadata for audio files, so that you could kind of see if, what the ownership is. And if you don't make it visible, you make it kind of maybe like a secret code, you could just simply have that right there. All right, so next question. I'm writing because the question might be too long for the live chat. I'm surprised that all the Steinberg compressor plugins that come with Cubase 14 Pro don't have a dual mono option. But as far as I can see, they're all stereo plugins. The only exception seems to be Magneto 3, which is, of course, not a compressor plugin, but it has a dual option. For users who want to compress individual tracks, that's not a problem. Users, however, want to make use of a compressor as an insert on a group channel. This means trouble, especially for groups that collect tracks where clear distinction between left and right channel, which must be a lot because everyone seems to want to make use of the wide stereo field. When inserting one of Steinberg's stock plugins, it means that the right channel is compressed if there's an impact on the left channel and vice versa. This has the unwanted effect for the group channel, turns the signal into something more mono. For example, a tom hit in the left channel will have the effect of the cymbal, which is mixed more to the right. All right, so in essence, I think what we want to do is to put a kind of a dual mono compressor on a stereo track. So let's show how to do that. So I'm going to come here, let's add a drum bus. So I'm going to add my group track to this, and it'll help if I activate the project first. Okay, so let's add our group track to the selector. We're going to make it stereo. All right, so if we wanted to apply different compression for the EQ and the snare, we're going to make this a stereo group. We'll open this up. Let's come over. I want to use my black valve compressor. All right, so we're going to run 2 instances of this, and this may not be like the most ideal solution, but I think it will work. And then when we come over here, we could go to the routing tab, and we're going to say, let's make this mono, and let's make this mono. And now when we double click, we could go into our routing editor. So we can say, okay, this is the left channel. And when we come over here, we'll say this is going to be the right channel. So now we could apply different compression on the left channel and the right channel using the same plugin. So just go to the routing channel, and then you could choose for different settings on the left and the right channel as needed. So this would allow you to run dual mono for any plugin on a stereo group. All right, and with that, I think we could jump back to our live questions. And if you want to send questions in advance, you could always send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, let's see if we have a couple other questions. All right, so we see from John Barry, just says, thanks, Greg. That's really useful to know. Tony Trunzo just says, thanks for today's live stream. So you're welcome. Thanks for joining us so early in the morning from Australia. All right. Pablo says, I need more vouchers. Radar of the band. What if Godzilla destroyed the machine? You could still remove that, undo the license and remove it. So Pablo says, Greg knows a trick. All right, let's see, Pablo just says, see that, Greg? He says, ha, secret. All right, and Flyv says, right on, thanks for today's live stream. Pablo says, boom. All right, and Jazz Dude says, the solution is hidden in the routing tab. All right, so Best Korean Jesus, great to see you popping out of lurking mode. His pleasure was all on this end of the screen. John Barry says, like that dual mono trick. All right. All right, so George just says, true, Greg, but with 2 compressors on the group track, there's no chance to link the compressor settings. This feature works only for plugins on different tracks. It would be great to link settings. Well, if you're linking the settings, then you wouldn't need to split it in the first place. So the reason that we are doing a dual mono compressor, I think, is so that, if you have a floor tom that needs to be heavily compressed, but you don't want it to affect the hi-hat, because if you wanted the settings to be linked, then it would make sense to, at that point, and also it would make sense at that point to run it as stereo. But if we wanted to link those, let's say we wanted to go to the modulators, we'll say, let's go to our macro knob, and I could come right over here. So let's go to our group channel, and we will open this up. So let's say I want to link the output. So I'll link the output here on this compressor. And I want to link the output on this compressor. So now when I move both, I move one knob here in the modulator, we can move the output and link the output of both knobs. So you could do that as well. All right. All right. All right. So we see Charles K. just says dual mono. That's great. Best Korean Jesus says, I lurk, but I'm getting back into the productions. It's great. Always wonderful to see you on. All right, James Daly says, thanks for your help, Greg. You're the best. Next time. All right. Val says, thanks, Greg. I learned a bit. Routing needs to be looked into more. All right. Pablo says, boom, because Greg did it again. All right. Dan Stenhouse asks, hi, Greg. Is there a way to select multiple tracks and create a new folder with those tracks like you can with sending multiple tracks to a group? It seems you have to create a blank folder first. All right. So let's say, yeah, we could do it. So let's come over here. So let's say I have these in a folder. I'll take them out of the folder. So these tracks, get rid of this folder track here just to. All right, so I want to take all of my drum tracks here. And then we could right click and we say move selected tracks to new folder. And now our new folder is created and all the tracks are in the folder. So select the events, right click in the track control area, move selected tracks to new folder. And then you're all set with that. See, Pablo just says, what? Jazz Dude saying, learn the modulators. And Pablo's like, I did not know that trick. So. All right, Pablo's saying he's going back to Cubase school. All right, John Barry's just saying cheers. See you all next time. And Dan Stenhouse says, thanks, too easy. So you're just one mouse click away from happiness, as my friend Greg Lukens likes to say. All right, so we are almost out of time. Let's see if there's any last minute questions that pop up. And if not, we will go ahead and wrap up. Thanks everyone for I know it was a bit different having our live stream on Wednesday. I appreciate everyone's understanding. It was nice to do a field trip, be a chaperone for my son's class. I appreciate everyone being flexible with moving to a different day. And we'll be back on our normal schedule starting on Friday. We'll see if there's any more questions that pop in. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. And if you want to send questions in advance, send them to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And look forward to seeing everyone on Friday. We hope everyone is getting a great start to, it's not officially summer, but it's getting there, feeling like summer. Pools are open in Northern Hemisphere where I am. So, all right. See, Pablo's asking, where is the Mr. Undo school? So I think it's all on Club Cubase live streams. All right. So we see Ryan Hardos just says, thanks for the stream, Greg, in chat. All right. So we see Tim K just thanking everyone. He's going to rewind all the parts that he missed. All right. So I guess looks like we are out of questions. I don't want to run overtime. We're just at 4 hours. Thanks for all the great questions. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. And we will see everyone back on Friday. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy. And we'll see you back Friday at 1 o'clock U.S. Eastern. Take care.